Yo, it's me. No. And I'm back, but this time I'm a bit less confident on my stance because I know how this looks. But recently I did a best arc in anime video, and while that was received, it was a bit hyperbolic based off of my own taste, and the exact same thing goes for the worst arc in anime, which I can hear the clickety clacks now, so while you're doing that, just go ahead and hit that like and subscribe. Yep, that's the one. Alright, straight to it. Worst arc in anime, and yeah, it's the war arc, so let me explain. I've been doing YouTube for a solid year now, and in that year I've made around 70 Naruto videos, give or take, and over this year I've learned a lot about myself in Naruto, and while its place in my life hasn't changed, giving a more close, thorough look at the series itself has made me much more familiar with its ups and downs in terms of a well-written and executed story. And while I've been able to appreciate the ups more, I've started to pick apart the downs and ask, why are these low points for me? And the war arc is the perfect jumping off point to explain what I mean. So let's start from the top. So, the war arc starts directly after the 5 Kage summit, and at this point in the story, Naruto has defeated Pain, and the village loves him. Sasuke has gone through an entire arc where he kills Itachi, avenges his clan, and then discovers Itachi was a misunderstood foe and kills Danzo, avenging Itachi. All the Akatsuki are dealt with, and even Orochimaru is dead. For all intensive purposes, the story is over. All the important storylines are done. So the quick ramp up to a war of all things feels sorta... I don't know how to put this, so I'm just gonna say a few words that apply. Unnecessary, out of place, dramatic, and not thought out, which sounds harsh because I have hindsight, but I want you to remember a lot of the war arc bad discourse comes from after the war arc. Like, there may have been whispers of not liking Kaguya, but it wasn't this widespread, obvious opinion that everybody had. That came well after, and people like me are probably to blame for that because, just my opinion, in the moment, most people seemed at least pretty okay with how the war went, and were more concerned with the end of Naruto as a whole, which is a whole nother can of worms I won't even touch here, but this setup is probably one of the most head-tilty things I've ever witnessed. Obito goes out of his way to show up and be like, death or war, you decide. And it's like, what kind of decision is that? And let's not act like that wasn't the offer Obito came with. If the villagers just handed over Bee and Naruto, who are not only the key to Obito's plan, but also a large chunk of the village's power, giving them up is clearly a death sentence, especially when the guy is saying things that basically allude to heaven, so war is inevitable, which sucks, but keep that in mind as we dive deeper to the actual war itself. You know, a lot of the things I'm going to talk about in this section are probably not even that bad in the grand scheme of things, but because they happen within a war that only took place over the course of what could be described as a crazy weekend, none of it feels quite right. Starting with Kabuto, who, if I had to pick, is probably the first thing I would get rid of, because up until this point, Kabuto had barely any screen time, no big moments, nothing to endear him in the slightest, and somehow he still manages to wiggle his way into being an in-game level threat, and we don't even get to see him do it, he just does. And the crazy part is, there was never even a hint that Kabuto was gathering anything to do anything, or even his transformation. We just see him transfuse some blood, and even that might be anime only, I'm not sure. It's not even really clear what he was trying to do, and from the way Kabuto speaks, it's clear he didn't really know what his goal was either, which I guess ties into his personality crisis, but not really, because at no point before this debacle did Kabuto ever show any problems with this, and it wasn't clear, but it did not seem like Kabuto was as evil as his bosses. He is visibly shaken by some of the things Orochimaru does in part 1, and Orochimaru isn't nearly as evil becomes by the war arc, because these bad guys get cartoonishly bad. Why is Obito doing what he's doing? And I don't want some stupid "he wanted to save the world" bull. He obviously just did this all over Rin. But that's not even what I mean. Obito starts out not trusting Madara, and even after learning of the plan and spending at least some months with Madara, he still wasn't on board at all until he sees Rin die. And now all of a sudden he's putting all of his belief in a guy who was not only dead, but had a terrible plan in the first place, and one that Obito until just now was not okay with. It is a crazy pivot that almost makes no sense in the context of the story. And the things that were just added to pad the war arc, like the white Zetsu, the upgraded reanimations, the Sage of Six Path tools, even the flippin' samurai are dealt with so quickly and never mentioned again that it's almost like they don't exist. And don't even get me started on the nostalgia clip show that most of the reanimation fights were. Just rehash jutsu and relationship closure with no stakes to fill time, because none of these battles felt like they really mattered. In fact, they felt like they were keeping us from the real important stuff. And I think the biggest reason none of these fights mattered is because not only have we seen these battles before, the reincarnations don't even seem to want to be here. They are actively complaining and helping the other side. So what's to see, really? Not to mention the real war fighting doesn't start until Naruto and Beast show up, which brings me to the last and probably biggest section of this video. Alright, let me just lay it out in its simplest form. At the point where the reincarnation battles are about to wrap up, we are about a quarter of a way through the war. And so far, neither side has really made a move. They're just clashing for visual's sake. And the series is basically telling you verbatim that the war will not truly start until Naruto arrives. Which is weird because he is supposed to be being held by Killer Bee away from the war. And again, they are the only way the allied shinobi can win, but they need to be on the battlefield for that to happen. So that plot point means nothing. And when Naruto does arrive, we just like, I can't even describe it in a witty way. I just have to tell you what happened. Naruto shows up and, I kid you not, turns an entire war into a 20v1 and is the only factor in the war until the first 4 Hokage show up. And speaking of which, Orochimaru is back, and for some reason has an entirely new outlook on life, which I won't count as bad, just a little dumb. And thanks to his new body, he's not only back to being relevant power-wise, he's now immortal in the same way a jellyfish is. And we will get to Sasuke, but before that, let's talk the weird love triangle that is Madara, Black Zetsu, and Kaguya. I will say that I would have been fine with Madara being the final bad, the big end battle, but we need to tweak some things. First, Madara cannot die. It took a crazy bend with little to no explanation to bring Madara back in the first place, because Kabuto shouldn't have even known about him, much less gotten a sample of his DNA, which doesn't even affect Obito's role, because you can just say Madara can't leave the cave because he's connected to the Ghetto statue and can't be disconnected for whatever reason. You decide. Maybe he's old and needs it for life support until he gets all the tail beasts, and then in return he gets his youth back. Or even just he needs to be connected to the statue until it's full or it goes away for whatever reason. I don't know. But he can't be dead. And Obito has to be aware of that. And thus is doing his bidding. So nothing really changes there. And when it comes to his power up, I do have a weird compromise just because Madara was way too strong. I think he should forego EMS and jump straight from MS to Rinnegan by getting some of Hashirama's DNA. And I say this because I want Sasuke to be the first one to have EMS and have it be on par with a Rinnegan, which I know sounds mad fucking crazy, but I think Sasuke and Madara should have separate normal paths to power that equal out until Madara absorbs the God Tree, and then Naruto and Sasuke can get their power-ups and beat Madara to save the day, cause can I be real with you? Like, really real. I liked Zetsu way better as the weird recon guy of the Akatsuki. His dual personality was much more interesting before you find out it's just a sentient blob globbed onto what is essentially a dead body. And in what well-written world would Madara have been caught off guard by Zetsu? No excuse makes any sense, and that leads us to Kaguya, who, do you realize, has probably one, maybe two real lines? That's lower than support characters in some filler arcs by a large margin. Kaguya, for all intents and purposes, is just an attack storm that exclusively Team 7 deals with, meaning the war is over. And now, let's talk about Sasuke. But let me ask you, what was the payoff to the war? I'll give you time. Okay, so if you said the payoff to the war was the Allied Shinobi forces won and everyone got to live normally again, wrong. The payoff for the war is the battle between Sasuke and Naruto, who, at this point, dial their sentiments up to 11 even though they just worked together with no qualms to beat God's mom, and still run directly off the battlefield straight to the battlefield. And for as on-site as this was, there was a lot of talking, and not about the fact that they literally already just put aside their differences. It's almost as if this light show was going to happen regardless of the war, and that's my biggest point in this video. You could completely remove the war arc and things would not change all that much. It's a very insular moment in Naruto that almost seems fake when it's brought up in Boruto. Naruto just casually talks about this war like it was a normal war between nations and not the reveal of aliens and superpowers and a whole bunch of other things that in this video don't really matter, but for the world of Naruto, insinuate that the Naruto country and all of its doings are damn near secret, and there's no way something like that would be a secret, even in the most ancient of times. And you may have noticed a pattern with me. I will always point out wasted potential and always be intrigued by untapped potential, which is why one of my favorite arcs in all of anime comes from Hunter x Hunter, and I already explained in another video so you can go watch that after this, but Greed Island had so much untapped potential, and Hunter x Hunter probably isn't even in my top 10 favorite anime. And for me, the war arc is the opposite. One of the worst arc anime has to offer because it wasted the little potential it had on gatewaying a sequel series. And honestly, it kinda ruined Naruto. But that's all I got. What did you think of the war arc? What would you have changed? Let me know down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video because I appreciate you watching. And until next time, peace.
That thunder on me clap, make a nigga think before he act. Have a nigga dying on his back, then we double back. Shooters leaving rubber where you at, that's why niggas never wanna match.